Hey, good morning to everybody. Daryl here, Daryl P, aka Artist and Recovery. And I was just on my usual daily bike ride. Got my bike right here. I stopped at this abandoned building here. And as I was pedaling on this like 5-mile ride out, 5-mile ride back, about 10 miles total, as I was starting the ride, I was thinking about, sometimes I get so caught up in my day, riding my bike or whatever, exercising, that I don't stop and smell the flowers, smell the roses, and it was one of those moments where I try to do this at least once, every day, is just look around, and smell that air, breathe that air in, and just look at what a beautiful day it is. It's about 80 degrees, sunny, beautiful, low humidity. This is the kind of day back in the winter, back when we had like 8 hours of sunlight and it was about 20 degrees below zero, that I was waiting for. And I try to remind myself every day, look around, just breathe that air in. You only get so many of these days in your life, before you don't wake up the next day. There's a finite amount of these days. Every day isn't a given. Every day is a gift, as they say. All right, but before I start lecturing, all right, I started thinking back about when I very first started smoking pot, my gateway drug. And some people aren't going to like what I'm going to say. Thinking back to when I was 14 or 15 years old, when I first started smoking, and how much fun it was. We would go to our local mall, and we would pull up and roll one up in the car and smoke it, and we would just laugh hysterically. We would laugh so hard we couldn't even walk in the mall. We'd go in the door, and we would just start laughing, and we'd have to turn around and go back out into the parking lot because we were just laughing insanely. To the point where your face hurt and you couldn't breathe, and we didn't even know what we were laughing about. Or the time we went inner tubing on a beautiful day like this. This is what it reminded me of. And we started to think, just like liquor a beer would seem to make like a night out more fun. Of course, beer would enhance. This is the mindset that I used to have before I got clean and sober. I've been clean and sober since October 23rd of 2006. 18 years, 8 months, and about 2 weeks, or about 1 week, over 18 and a half years. And I don't need any of that stuff these days. And let me finish talking about this. So we'd go inner tubing, and it was called Satan's Kingdom in New Hartford, Connecticut. You can look it up. It's actually a state park called Satan's Kingdom. And there's an tubing business where we would tube down the rivers. And of course, when I was younger, first started smoking, I thought the little weed would make this so much better. We could pull off on our inner tubes and light one up over like in a cove where nobody would see us, and that would be so much more fun. It would enhance the day. So I bought this little waterproof container from my local head shop, packed my weed in, and we did that. Or we would go to the local reservoir where we weren't supposed to swim. It was legal to swim in the reservoir, but that didn't stop us. We'd bring our inner tubes in the summer, and we, I don't know if I was even working at 15. Well, I had a paper route, and I just needed $5, a couple dollars for gas, a couple dollars for a joint, and about $1.80 for a 40 ounce or a Colt 45. And me and my buddy would each float on our inner tube across the reservoir. But of course, we needed that beer and that joint. It enhanced the day. Then, as I got a little older, I started snorting coke and everything. And of course, everybody wanted to hang out with the guy with the blow, man. I would have a party at my house, and everybody would want to come. And I'd go in my bedroom, and only select people would be able to come in there with me. Because before I started using that, I remember I would go to parties and everybody would just disappear into the bedroom, and I'd knock on the door. Hey, it's Daryl, let me in. We'll be out in a second, just wait, And then I became the guy that, got to pick and choose who got into the inner sanctum, So it enhanced the day, it enhanced the party, or so I thought. And I bought more and more, and then I started selling it because it brought power, it brought women, it brought money. Everybody wanted to be around me, or so I believed. And then I started smoking it. And then things changed a little bit. I remember going to an Ozzy concert, and it went from where the drugs enhanced the night to the drugs were the night. I wanted backstage tickets to meet Ozzy in New Jersey at I think it was at Shea Stadium, and we won a limo down, and I had a quarter ounce, and I got so geeked up on the way down that my friends went in, and I stayed in the car the entire night. I stayed in the limo the entire night, drinking from the bar, getting sick all over the floor of the limousine, getting pinned by Jesus, so much that I couldn't even talk. I couldn't get out of the limo. I was all paranoid. And I missed the entire Ozzy show. I never got to meet him or anything. Well, not that time. I was so pinned, I couldn't even deal with anybody. I did get out of the limo to go to the bathroom, and I couldn't find the limo. There was a line of limousines, like 50 limos, and they all looked the same. And I was so high, I started knocking on different limousine windows to find the one I was in. So I almost went to jail that night. And it just kept getting to the point where it was just more and more about the drugs, and the night didn't seem to be, it used to enhance whatever I did that night. Then it became the night. Then it became everything. Then I would just get the drugs and go home and do them all by myself. And that's really what it came down to. That's how this whole thing evolved. But before you say, well, that's not me, I just smoke a little weed and it still is a good time. Even back then, I remember, it was a hassle. You had to make sure I had the weed. I had to make sure that I had enough weed, or I had the money for it, or whatever. And I wasn't. It started all the way back then. I started not to pay attention to what was around me. I thought I was enhancing the day. I thought it was an enhancement, when really it right from the very beginning, back when I was 15, it was the more important thing. It became, as soon as I started using it, it became essential in the back of my mind. And it took away from just smelling that air and looking around me. And today, I don't need anything. Today, I just sit here and I really see the day, and I really smell the air. And I don't need money or drugs or weed or anything. I really see and smell and feel how beautiful this day is. I don't need anything else. I don't know if you guys understand that. Like I said, and it's not just at the very end. It was at the very beginning, too, where I fooled myself. I thought it was enhancing everything, and it really wasn't. It was right from the very first time. It was making itself the most important thing. I remember one of the very first times, like, we would smoke when I was like 15 or 16, and then we would go play video games, Dig Dug, at the arcade, and then we'd go have ice cream, and then we'd go home. And right away, I'd call my buddy, hey, you want to go do that tonight? And he'd be like, well, you have weed? And I'd say, no, do you? No. Well, we'll do it some other night. You see what I mean? From the very beginning, we wouldn't even go out. Right when we first started smoking, if we didn't have the weed, well, no point in even going out. And we really were telling ourselves that it was enhancing everything. It was making everything more fun. It was adding to everything. It was the spice. It was the little dessert. It was the cherry on top of the sundae. No, it was all a lie. It was all true. It was just, it was all just us lying to ourselves. It was just covering over our eyes, and right from the very beginning, the drugs and alcohol and the addiction fooled me into thinking that it was just enhancing the day, when it was really becoming the most important thing right from the very first time I smoked weed. Just my opinion, having been there. You could listen to me or not. Most people probably won't if they're young and they're just smoking weed. So you live and you learn. Maybe it won't happen to you. Better hope. Have a good day. Stop and smell the roses.